Sandollar Law is a law firm operating out of Milford, Connecticut. Recently, I spoke with Alan Harrison, founder of the firm who spends time helping small business owners and investors, providing legal counsel and protection of intellectual property, commercial transactions, business disputes, and more. We spoke with him about the services he provides, changes in the legal world, as well as advice for future attorneys. So what exactly do you do here at Sandollar? I understand you help disputes with people, whether it be contracts or copyright things?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I mainly handle disputes at this point. Some of the cases I've handled in the past year include a dispute over who got to use an airplane and a dispute over who got to use a trademark for cookies or cookie cutters, depending who was trying to use the trademark. Some other things are the ownership of a house up in Manchester. There was a family LLC, and there was an argument over who should be paying rent and who should be getting dividends from the use of the house. Right now I'm involved in a couple of disputes about business investments.
Harrison represents clients in disputed matters in a wide range of industries and carries over 12 years of legal practice. Sandollar Law has managed business acquisitions from $50,000 to $4.5 million, and it has negotiated contracts up to $500,000 in value.
Yeah, it's interesting you ask whether I've worked with celebrities. Last year I was actually working with a professional women's hockey player to defend her trademark for, she had a podcast about being a hockey player, and she also had a group she organized for hockey moms to play hockey. She had a trademark for those endeavors, and another PWHL player copied her trademark for a similar venture. And so that got pretty contentious pretty quick because, hockey players are kind of hot-tempered. So, yeah, dealing with that was very interesting, but that's the closest I've come to dealing with a celebrity.
To clarify, patents protect processes and inventions. Trademarks protect brands, logos, and slogans that distinguish goods and services, and copyright protects original created works like films, books, or songs. As for the PLLC itself, PLCC, is that correct?
Yeah, PLLC, it's a law firm. Law firms in Connecticut have to be PLLC, like other professional services companies. So doctors, dentists, etc., if they have an LLC, it has to start with a P. And what that means is they're limited to only providing their professional service under that business. So, for example, I couldn't run a bowling alley under Sandollar PLLC. I'd say that every case I've dealt with has been a significant legal right has been impacted, whether it's loss of money or money being paid for something that didn't happen. Or, if somebody's parents left them a house as part of their estate, and then the person who inherited the house doesn't get to use it and doesn't get any money out of it, that's not just an emotional grievance, though it is emotionally impacting for that person. There's a significant legal right to an inheritance, and if you're being denied the money from it, that's a serious matter.
Harrison is admitted for work in Connecticut state and federal courts, as well as before the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and he carries a law degree from the University of Connecticut, as well as a mechanical engineering degree from Northeastern. Before he began his PLLC, he also served as a mechanical and nuclear engineer and a naval submarine officer.
Well, I wish I had figured out right out of law school that I was a natural business law firm owner. But in fact, it took me about 10, 12 years to realize that I would be good at launching my own law firm and that I liked working with small business owners in particular. Initially, I was an intellectual property lawyer at mid-sized firms, first in Hartford, then in Greenwich, and then in Stamford. And I liked working in intellectual property law, but the client base wasn't really my type of people. IP law is mostly big corporations. And I really prefer working with small entrepreneurs, people who run their own businesses, make their own decisions, don't have to answer to a bureaucracy. So in the past few years, I've been taking on small business work, whether it's individual entrepreneurs who have trademarks they need to defend, or people who have significant problems with business partners or with vendors or customers. That's really where my focus is the small business owners.
Would you say that a lot of these small business owners or just people in general in the world like know how the trademark, copyright, patent world works, or they have a lot of questions and they go to you? Because I understand everyone could just like look something up on Google now and try to figure it out, but it's not exactly, could be like the exact information, or they might not understand it wrong.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned Google. In fact, what a lot of people are doing now is going to ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or Claude for legal advice. And there's a couple of things that come up with that. I use AI myself for legal research, and what I've noticed is there's two types of questions you can ask AI. You can ask it an open question or a closed question. An open question is something like, what have courts said about trademark infringement? And you generally get back a pretty good answer. You have to know how to apply the answer. A closed question is like, here's my trademark, here's my competitor's logo, are they infringing my trademark? And the danger of LLMs is that they'll, on a closed question, they will give you back what they think you want to hear. And if you ask, is my competitor infringing my trademark, the LLM is likely to say yes, because predictably, statistically, that's what people want to hear when they ask that question. The problem with that is that you might then embark on a legal campaign that's not really based in the law or the fact. That can be expensive and frustrating. And so I would caution people looking to ChatGPT for legal advice, first of all, ask open questions. And then if you have problems understanding how to apply the open question, that's when you need to get a lawyer involved to interpret it and make sense of it. Because you can't really count on a large language model to make sense of things for you. It's just going to tell you what it thinks you want to hear, basically.
In a changing world of law and modern technology, it brings about new problems around AI and what is considered fair use of media, ownership if the author itself is not human, and globalizing companies which may have to sail into international law to defend different approaches to handling legal action. A variable that has to be considered is that artificial intelligence often guesses what the answer is based on existing people's work if the answer that needs to be given is unclear. How you are dealing with the whole copyright world, because I understand that AI, now that we're on the mention of it, it takes a lot of stuff that is already existing on the internet and then like puts it out into an answer to someone without like really explaining like where exactly it came from.
Yeah, so that is an issue with AI. The way AI works is that it has a very, very large database of information that it kind of uses to predict what word should go next in response to a question. And so it's not necessary that AI actually copies or reproduces somebody's work, but it will guess what the answer should be based on someone's work. And so, for example, one of the famous examples of AI pretty much infringing on a copyright is the Afghan girl painting. You know, at least for a few years, if you asked AI to give you a painting of an Afghan girl, it would basically reproduce that photograph of the blue-eyed girl in the burqa, which looked a lot like copyright infringement. And so that can be a problem if you ask a very specific question, or a question that has a limited set of data that's responsive to it. But in general, I don't think AI necessarily infringes on anybody's copyright.
IP or intellectual property attorneys like Harrison are only one type of attorney. Criminal defense, family, personal injury, tax, estate planning, and employment and labor are just some to name a few. It may be a daunting task for someone looking to study law, yet may be extremely rewarding for many despite the challenge needed to get there. In terms of IP litigation and small business law, the opportunity to make a difference, of course, via social impact is significant. Field, like, should they go into the field? Like, what is particularly like challenging or rewarding about like working in your field?
Well, I think one of the biggest things about being an attorney in general is that it's better to own a firm than it is to work at a firm. And so I'd encourage people considering the law to think about whether they'd like to have their own law firm. One thing I learned as what's called an associate, which is an employee at a law firm, is that the way you become an owner of a law firm is by demonstrating you can build a book of business and work with clients. And everything else is kind of secondary to that. Once you can build a book of business, you can have your own law firm, and you don't have to deal with the headaches of being in a partnership. So to answer your question, I think that one of the great things about working with small business owners is that they are very intelligent, hardworking, and community-oriented people. My experience with small business clients is that they're nice people to work with. They're respectful of my time. They appreciate the respect I give them. And they're just generally all-around good people.
Imagine that would make your job more difficult because maybe there was just as much of this infringement in the past, but now it's getting to the point where like you can see it more, which is probably a good thing, I'd imagine. But would you say that's true or no?
I'd say that the level of work really seems to be about the same as it's been for years. I don't think detecting infringement has ever been the limit on whether people would bring a lawsuit. I think really the limit has always been whether it made economic sense. When you see somebody infringing your copyright, there's statutory damages or there's actual damages. But either way, in order to bring a lawsuit for infringement, you have to register the copyright. And I think the number of people registering a copyright before bringing a lawsuit hasn't really changed. A lot of people have unregistered works, and then they see somebody making a copy of it or imitating it, and they want to sue the person, but when they go to an attorney, they find out they don't have a registration, they can't get into court. So I think the big limit to copyright work for lawyers is that not many people think ahead of time to register the copyright for their work, which is actually a very inexpensive process with the Copyright Office. It's only, I think, $65 is the current fee to file a copy of your work and get a copyright registration.
Whether you need to start up, purchase, or sell your business, law firms like Sandollar PLLC exist to aid clients and otherwise make tiresome legal processes simpler. Dispute resolution over business vendors, legal agreements and partnerships, or licensing of intellectual property such as patents, trademarks, or copyright law seems to be something needed more than ever as a knowledge and skill. Changes in the legal world with artificial intelligence and digital technology are constantly happening and moving, and it's always best to be aware and alert of the general law regarding intellectual property as well as other endeavors that you may partake in with legal action.
I'm at 185 Broad Street in Milford, or sandollar-law.net. If you search ChatGPT or Google for Sandollar Law Milford, you'll find me.
I just want to ask, is there anything else that you want the people to know out there, whether they're just learning about copyright or maybe they don't even need copyright advice, but they're just trying to learn about the law, or anything else you want to say?
Given the current climate, I'll just say that, if somebody wants to arrest you, they need a warrant from a judge.